All right, quick question. Have you ever grabbed a snack you've been buying for years, opened the bag, and thought, was this always this small? Same brand, same packaging, same price, but somehow a less snack. That moment right there is the modern retail economy quietly tapping you on the shoulder. Today we're talking about shrinkflation, but not in the usual companies are sneaky way people talk about it, because something bigger is happening. Products are getting smaller not only because of inflation, but because modern retail and marketplace economics actually reward smaller, more efficient product designs. Inflation may have started the trend, but Amazon logistics, shipping costs, packaging efficiency, and global supply chains are accelerating it. And once you start seeing it, you see it everywhere. Chocolate bars, chips, candy, cereal, even product packaging itself. Today we're going to break this down through 7 stories. And by the end of the episode, you'll see why shrinkflation might not be temporary. It might actually be the future of product design in modern retail. Let's start with the big picture. Shrinkflation has technically been around for decades, but the past few years have pushed it into overdrive. Companies are dealing with rising costs across the board. Ingredients cost more, transportation costs more, labor costs more, packaging costs more, energy costs more. Now, traditionally, a company could just raise prices, but consumers hate that. There's something about watching a product jump from $4.99 to $5.49 that just feels offensive to the human brain. Economists call this price sensitivity. Consumers notice price increases immediately, but they often don't notice quantity decreases. So instead of raising prices, companies shrink the product. Same price, slightly less product, margins stay intact. And a surprising number of shoppers never notice. Unless you're the kind of person who counts the number of chips in the bag. And if you are that person, first of all, respect. Second of all, you're absolutely noticing this trend. Researchers studying packaged food sizes have actually found that average package sizes have declined over time. Meaning if you ignore shrinkflation, you might actually underestimate how much food prices have really increased. So this isn't just a conspiracy theory people complain about on Reddit. It's a real economic pattern. But here's where the story gets interesting. Because shrinkflation isn't just about inflation. It's also about logistics. And that's where the modern marketplace economy comes in. Before we get into that, quick break. This episode is brought to you by Bellavix. If you're a brand selling on Amazon, Walmart, or Target marketplaces, you already know how complicated modern retail has become. Advertising platforms are evolving, search algorithms change constantly, and operational costs can quietly eat away at margins. Bellavix helps brands navigate that complexity. From marketplace strategy to advertising optimization to catalog growth, the goal is simple. Help brands scale profitably across modern retail platforms. If you want to learn more, head over to bellavix.com. Now, back to the show. Let's talk about Reese's. Because nothing makes shrinkflation more real than when it hits a snack everyone knows. Recently, consumers started noticing something interesting about certain Reese's products. Same packaging, same price, but fewer pieces or slightly smaller quantities. And suddenly the internet does what the internet does best. People start comparing photos. Old packaging next to new packaging, counting pieces, measuring weights, chocolate CSI. And this is where shrinkflation becomes visible. Because when an iconic product changes size, people notice. From a business perspective though, the logic is straightforward. Chocolate prices fluctuate, sugar prices fluctuate, shipping costs fluctuate. If you raise the retail price too quickly, consumers push back. But if you slightly reduce the quantity inside the package, the price stays familiar. And the product remains competitive on store shelves. Now multiply that decision across thousands of products and hundreds of brands, and suddenly shrinkflation becomes a system. Not just a tactic, but here's where things get even more interesting. Because this isn't just happening in the United States. Across the Atlantic in the UK, consumers have been noticing the same thing. Cadbury chocolate bars getting slightly smaller. Snack products losing a few grams. Grocery staples shrinking while prices stay roughly the same. British media has been covering this heavily because consumers are noticing the pattern across multiple products. And the key takeaway is this: shrinkflation isn't a regional issue. It's a global pricing strategy. When companies face similar cost pressures around the world, they often reach the same conclusion. Don't move the price, move the product size. It's subtle, but economically, it works. Now at this point, you might be thinking, okay, this is just about inflation. Companies are trying to survive rising costs. That's part of the story. But there's another force pushing products to get smaller, and that force is logistics. Quick pause to thank our sponsor again. If you're a brand navigating Amazon, Walmart, or Target marketplaces, you know how fast things move. Advertising platforms evolve, retail media networks expand, and operational strategy becomes just as important as marketing. Bellavix works with brands to manage and scale marketplace performance across these platforms. You can learn more at bellavix.com. All right, let's get back into it. Let's talk about Amazon, because Amazon quietly changes how products are designed. Inside Amazon's fulfillment network, costs are heavily tied to product size and weight. Storage fees depend on dimensions. Shipping fees depend on weight. Fulfillment costs depend on packaging tiers, which means something very interesting happens. If a brand reduces the size of a product slightly, it may drop into a cheaper fulfillment category. A slightly lighter product may reduce shipping costs. A slightly smaller package may reduce warehouse storage costs. And when you're shipping millions of units, those small changes become very large numbers. So suddenly, shrinkflation isn't just about inflation. It's about operational efficiency. Products get smaller because smaller products move more efficiently through logistics networks. That's a very different story than the one most consumers hear, but it's a very real part of modern commerce. And this leads to the next evolution of the story: packaging. E-commerce has quietly triggered a packaging revolution. Shipping millions of individual products directly to consumers forces companies to rethink packaging design. Smaller packaging reduces shipping costs. Lighter materials reduce freight costs. Better packaging reduces damage during delivery, which means companies are redesigning packaging around logistics efficiency, not just shelf appearance. Some brands even redesign the product itself to fit shipping networks more efficiently. That's something you rarely hear consumers talk about. But inside operations teams, it's a constant conversation. If a product fits better into a shipping box, that matters. If packaging stacks better in a warehouse, that matters. If weight drops by a few ounces, that matters. Multiply those efficiencies across millions of orders, and suddenly the incentive is obvious. Smaller is better. And now shrinkflation starts to look less like a trick and more like an optimization strategy. Now, of course, consumers eventually notice. And that brings us to the final part of this story: transparency. Because as shrinkflation becomes more visible, policymakers and consumer advocates are starting to ask questions. Should companies be required to clearly disclose when product sizes change? Should unit pricing be more visible? Should packaging changes be easier to identify? Right now, there's no universal rule, but the debate is getting louder. And the more consumers talk about shrinkflation, the more attention it gets from regulators and media, which could eventually force brands to rethink how quietly they adjust product sizes. So let's zoom out for a second. The real takeaway from this entire conversation is this: products are getting smaller not only because of inflation. They're getting smaller because modern retail rewards efficiency. Smaller products cost less to ship. Smaller products cost less to store. Smaller packaging reduces logistics costs. And marketplace platforms like Amazon amplify those incentives, which means shrinkflation may not disappear when inflation cools. It may actually become a permanent feature of modern retail. The next time you open a snack bag and think, was this always this small? The answer might be no, but the reason might not be what you think. Before we wrap up, one quick ask. If you enjoy the show, take a moment to leave us a review. Reviews help more operators, brands, and marketplace sellers discover the podcast. And the more people we reach, the more conversations we get to have about how modern retail is actually evolving behind the scenes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on Selling on Giants.